At 6:30 on that.
Okay, we're going to go then.
Sounds good.
I'm going to call this meeting to order, and I certainly welcome everyone that's come to the meeting and appreciate your attendance. Our first item on our agenda is always a flag salute, so if everyone please join us.
Join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're now ready for the approval of the agenda. There have been basically 3 items scratched under action items. Items C and E are being pulled from this evening's agenda, and possibly item 2 under the superintendent's report, yearbook ad sales report, unless the person that was going to report on that shows up shortly. So, does anybody else have anything that changed in the agenda other than those 2 items? 3 items, basically.
That's it.
I will move that we approve the agenda as amended this evening.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda as it was amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously, so that will be our agenda for this evening. The next item on our agenda is for visitors, and this is part of the agenda for anyone wishing to speak before the board, either as an individual or a group. Visitors are asked to address the board at the microphone and state your name and address prior to presenting your information. You're also asked to limit your remarks to 3 minutes. The board will listen but probably not discuss the topic at this time, but the board may consider moving the topic to a discussion item at a future meeting date. So is there anyone that would like to approach the board this evening? Jamie, okay.
Jamie, I think I'm going to have you go up around that way because there's cords. Yeah, you just slide up behind the counter there. Otherwise, there's cords, I think, in there. So, okay.
Hi, my name is Jamie Brush, and I live on Pioneer Hill. And I am here just to advocate, like I frequently do, for the board to continue to consider safe walking and biking access for the elementary school and for the students who will be attending the school. I know in the schematic design that has been presented to you, there's 4 driveways, and I have called for 3 of those to be eliminated and for a bus turnout to instead go in place where the bus loop and the car loop is. And some of the feedback I've heard is that there isn't adequate space for the buses to turn around. So I have spoken with several department heads in the city, and there are possible solutions to that, such as if Terraview terminates and doesn't go all the way through to Canyon View, it's common practice in Pullman right now to terminate that street where it accommodates basically bus turnaround or turnaround for a fire truck. So it looks more of like a court design, such as what you see at Cayley Court. So without going into too many details, and I know with the schematic design, everything is not definite with the way it is, I just want to really encourage the board to continue to provide me with the opportunity to give input and to really work to find a solution that will accommodate the kids, the parents, and the teachers, and the people in the neighborhood who will be accessing this school. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate the input. Would anyone else like to approach the board this evening on an issue that's not on our agenda? All right, I appreciate that. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is reports, correspondence, and programs. First item is board reports. I'll start down here to my far left. Director Susan Weed.
No report.
Okay. Dr. Johansson.
I have no report.
Okay. Dr. Everman?
Just that we, several of us attended the regional WASDA meeting over in La Crosse, Washington, last Wednesday. It was a good meeting, well attended. Our state representatives were not present, although we had the WASDA representatives there and someone from OSPI. So I thought it was a worthwhile meeting.
Very good, thank you. Dr. Macharotola?
No report.
Okay, and I have no report this evening either, so we'll go right into our superintendent's report. Dr. Maxwell, what have you got for us?
Yes, well, thank you. Well, last board meeting, I talked about the Outstanding Community Partner Award that we received from the YMCA of the Palouse, and at that time we had neglected to bring the plaque. It was still sitting on Shannon's desk, but I'll pass that down so you can take a look at it. So, very nice to receive that award, and it was a very nice evening as well. So, wanted to share that with the board so they could actually see it. And that'll be our copy that will, or a plaque that we'll have hanging up in the office. So. With that, construction update, I'll kind of go right into that. As you can tell at the high school here, we're well underway to moving into the second wing next Monday. So this weekend will be a very busy weekend of moving furniture and getting materials into the classrooms, and a lot of work continues on the outside. New development today, I know I've been talking about the possibility of delaying asphalting till spring on that back parking lot. Now we think we can do it before winter hits and do it both economically and structurally sound. So we're exploring that possibility. We'll see what the rains this week will do, and it may be another week, but they think that they have a plan that we can build up the base to where it needs to be and put that asphalt in. So I'll keep you appraised of that latest development. So we may actually get asphalt back there before.
They poured a lot of concrete along the post line today.
Yes, they
this
did.
morning.
So things are moving well. They're moving fast and furious, and with that comes a lot of extra meetings and extra work and making sure everything gets done. So. It's going along well. Kamiak Elementary School will be having a presentation tonight on the schematic design, and so I'll leave it at that. And collaboration today, very focused. People were working hard and looking at data and having great conversations about teaching and learning. So appreciate all the work that the teachers have done this week, and especially today during collaboration. That's my report.
Okay. Were you going to go ahead and have your program compliance
Yep.
report on
I can do that.
Okay.
So, program compliance report, this is something that is an annual kind of quick update. Won't read everything to you since you've seen this in the packet. I'll just highlight a couple things. 1.0, appropriate measures taken to safeguard all student and student district permanent records. We continue to work on that. We still need to improve our district archive protection for payroll accounts, accounts payable and personnel. As you know, we have those in a classroom at Pioneer Center, but the most vital records we do put in fireproof safes, but those are limited in space and very expensive and very heavy to put up on a second floor. So we are taking a look at making sure we're organizing and using our space appropriately, so the work continues in that area. Number 2, provision made for the supervision of instructional practices and procedures. Again, all of our principals have participated in training for TPEP. They have monthly collaboration activities, and we've been conducting our learning walks, and we have another one coming up next week at Jefferson. So, 3.0, current basic instructional materials are available for required course of study. We've finished last year our social studies mid-level adoption. This year we'll be focusing on world language and science, and so those will be the 2 primary adoptions that we'll be taking a look at getting started. So 4.0, guidance, program guidance, counseling, testing services. Really not much changes other than we do have the set assessment schedule for the state assessments. We are taking a look at working at either narrowing or eliminating some of the district assessments we've been giving. An example of that is our Dibbles testing, taking story retail out, which has shortened that amount of time that we spend, and it really wasn't giving us a specific information that we were looking for. So we're continuing to take a look at our state assessment schedule and our district assessment schedule to see what we can do to improve the efficiency and effectiveness. Learning 5.0, learning resources, again, continually changing, but we are in compliance with our state and federal regulations, our Title I lab programs and special education. As you know, ESSA will be coming online. Spending a lot of time providing feedback and looking over program recommendations. There are some significant changes that are being proposed that could drastically reduce our Title I funding. And so I'll be composing a letter to send to give my feedback to our state and federal government. Physical facilities at each building are adequate and appropriate for educational programming offered. As you know, we completed the 4 additional classrooms at Jefferson this year. We're currently working on the high school, and we're in the schematic design phase for Kamiak Elementary. This year in August, Executive Director of Operations Joe Thornton and each building principal did a safety walk both around and through their school to list out those items that needed to be repaired immediately and or those that could wait and have been put on a schedule. So safety walks were conducted in all our buildings in August prior to the start of school. An example of that was putting extra bark in our playground structures that didn't meet the minimum number, and as over the summer they decompose, get moved. So appreciate all the work that they worked on in August to get that ready for school. 7.0, there's adequate provision of health and safety students within the custody of the school district. So again, we have a full-time registered nurse. Actually, we have 2 and an LPN, so we have quite a few nursing staff. And they provide related training as required and as needed. And also our schools and departments hold regular safety meetings and report safety concerns. 8.0 is our current policy statement pertaining to administration operation of school districts, and we're continuing to make sure that all of our current policies are available on the district website, and we are continually editing and updating our policies and procedures. And within the next couple of board meetings, you'll receive another batch that we've been working on. So, excuse me. 9.0 complies with all federal, state rules and regulations. This is non-discrimination, and our school district posts our documents related to this policy, and we comply with all non-discrimination procedures. 10.0, within each school, school principals determine the appropriate school discipline is established and enforced. Each school has student handbooks that are distributed electronically and available in hard copy, and each school has implemented a form of positive behavior intervention systems and teaches expectations to students. And 11.0, written high school graduation requirement rules have been adopted by the school district board of directors. As you know, we adopted policy 2410 and implemented procedures 2410, and those were updated last year to be in compliance with the changes going to the 24 credit. And then 12.0, equivalency among all schools and teachers, administrators, auxiliary personnel, and equivalence and provision of curriculum material supplies among schools who receive Title I funds. Efforts are made in this area of instruction and operations to ensure there's equitable distribution of resources among schools. So that is your program compliance report.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the uncollected non-tax revenue report. Did you want to introduce that, Dr. Maxwell?
Yes, and present will be Diane Hodge, our finance manager.
Every year, according to Policy 6119, we're required to bring before the board our uncollected non-tax revenue. This revenue is from unpaid rentals, miscellaneous fees, and fines. And we do whatever we can to collect the revenue. We send out a letter. The first letter, we give them 30 days to respond. If we don't hear, we send out a second notice, giving them an additional 30 days, letting them know that if we don't hear again within that 30 days, they're going to go to collection. If we don't hear after that additional 30 days, then they're sent to collection. After 7 years, the collection agency actually writes off the debt, and according to our Policy 6119, the board will also write off any debt 7 years old. So we're bringing to the board, we have some debt back from 2008 and 2009 that if it's not collected by December 31st of this year, that we will write that debt off. And so we're just bringing it to you and notifying you that we do have debt back from 2008 and 2009 that we will be writing off if it's not collected before December 31st. Are there any questions?
Questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much, Diane. Appreciate that report.
Okay.
The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, and we use the consent agenda to
PHS,
I'm sorry.
ASB report.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Thank you for catching that as I turned the page. We've got ASB report this evening, so if our ASB representatives come forward, introduce yourselves, please, and anxious to hear what's happening.
Hello, my name is Lucy Ward, and I'm the senior class president.
And my name is Asha Campbell, and I'm the freshman class president. And this month, we've been working on a lot of stuff. Homecoming just ended. Homecoming week was a big success, and we had a lot of good outcomes from that. And right now, we're working on, at the end of October, we're going to have a food drive. We call it Scare Away Hunger. It's going to be from October 28th or 24th to the 28th. And we're just hoping to get a lot of food donations from that, and that's all going to be going to the Community Action Center. And that's what we're working on right now.
Additionally, with the food drive, we're going to be decorating classroom doors, so that'll hopefully add some color and some life to the new hallway. And also looking into next month, we're thinking about doing something for Veterans Day. We haven't made any for sure decisions on that yet, but we want to incorporate that into a fundraiser. And then looking into the future, we haven't decided for sure yet, but we want to try to do something district-wide like we did last year with our Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader fundraiser, which was a big success. We want to look at a way that we can incorporate the elementary and middle schools in a fundraiser again this year.
I have a question, maybe Eric knows, or maybe you know. What was going on today out at the field? Was that just cross-country, inter-team competition?
That was
going on?
cross-country. I actually did race today with that. And yeah, it was just a dual meet against East Valley, and we won, so.
All right.
Yeah.
We have to thank Mr. Thornton for designing a very excellent course with what we have available. So.
Well, that was, I was unaware there seemed to be a lot of circling going on the infield. And as I was wheeling the ping pong table over, I saw arrows, blue arrows this way. But I didn't realize it was actual competition. Both the boys and
Yes.
boys and girls, young women, young men, won. Congratulations.
Anything else for us?
I think so.
Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Always exciting to hear what's happening in the school. Now, we'll go to our consent agenda, and to expedite business at the board meetings, the board approves the use of a consent agenda, which includes items to be considered routine in nature. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed from the consent agenda by any single member of the board, and then voted on separately. The remaining items will be voted on by a single motion. So does any board member have anything from the consent agenda they'd like to pull this evening?
I will move that we approve the consent agenda as presented this evening.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as it was presented. The consent agenda this evening consists of the minutes of our last meeting, some expense warrants, personnel reports, personal and professional service contracts, overnight field trip requests, and student transfers. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. That moves us on to the action items for this evening, and then the first action item is implementation of the PHS fines. Dr. Maxwell, who's going to do that for us?
Yes, I'm going to ask Principal Eric Hines to come up, and he presented last time the background information regarding the recommendation, and I don't know if he has anything extra to add, but he's welcome to add, and if not, answer any questions you might have.
Well, thank you. We presented a sample copy of what we were kind of thinking is kind of a parking infraction. It was a progressive system that we would use with students. At the request of some suggestions, we did take the other checkbox off and made it simply about parking. We've met twice as an administrative team since then to kind of talk about, some of the other options, what we do with progressive discipline, kind of looking at some of our corrective action codes and how that might tie in with that. One of the things we've been doing is we've been really trying to be out in the morning at least 3 days a week and start to do a little parking enforcement, some preemptive parking enforcement as students come in. What we have noticed is we have had to have a lot of students move their vehicles based on where they are parking. If you're familiar with the parking lot, the triangle areas, some of the painted areas that are not designated parking spots, students have been parking in. We've had a couple of accidents since then, including one of our staff members who's now been hit twice. Just based on how full the lot is. One of the biggest concerns that we've had from the community talking with us is people parking on the crosswalks. And so, again, we have been trying to be more of a presence out there, having students moves. And for the most part, students have not argued with us. I think they get it. I think when they're in a hurry, they try to find the best space that they think is available and park there. So we're really trying to press the safety, especially with when they park in those non-designated spots. It does create a hazard, and I'll be honest, this is not true for every occurrence, but most of the time they're rather large vehicles that are parked in those spaces, which prohibits other cars from backing out. So we're really looking at how we can be proactive and with our parking enforcement. We've had a challenge of the date of when we can open up the back, getting pushed back a few times. And even with the ease of having our staff move to the back, we still have 30, 40 students that are on our waiting list to try to get a parking permit. And my experience with parking lots in the past, and when talking with Mr. Thornton, I don't think this is any different, is there is an influx of a lot more requests once we hit the spring with 16-year-olds getting their licenses and things like that. So we are not here to present this as the be-all, end-all solution, but we think this might be one way to try to curb some of that irregular parking behavior and look at how we can improve that for our school. So,
Any comments or questions?
I think it's reality-based.
Have you thought about towing kids?
That was brought up, and the last time I suggested that in a different district, it was violently rebuffed. And part of the challenge with that is we're talking about $5 to $10 parking fines. A tow can be anywhere upwards of $250. While that might send a very clear message, I don't know how, as far as working with our community, how that would be received. We've thought of it as an option. I think that we might look at that as an extreme option, and our hope is to try and avoid that if we can. So.
It might be a little inducement to mention it at least on the ticket.
Yeah, and that might be, you know, again, I don't know, as we build up the ladder of offenses, I think if we get to the point where we do revoke somebody's parking privileges, that would definitely be a logical next step. So,
Well, all I was thinking was that it
Yeah.
should be then.
on the
mentioned.
ticket, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, and I guess, and that's part of, I'll be honest, I didn't bring it up just based on my past experience of that not even being considered as an option. So,
Oh, we're just trying to drum up some business in Myers. All right.
Any further comments, questions, or discussion?
I just bring this up because I realized we had suggested we drop the other category, but just last week we had a constituent concern about vandalism and trashing
Yep.
of the parking area. So a ticket certainly would be good to have
yeah.
if the party could be identified.
Well, and I've also talked with Mr. Thornton about, you know, our maintenance schedules, and we, in the last 2 days, we reworked our custodial schedule to try and make that a focus area. I know Mr. Franklin and myself, when we've been out there in the mornings, we go around and pick up what we can. You know, and I know part of that is, I imagine, is due to our open campus. You know, we've encouraged students to do that. In the newsletter we're sending out tomorrow, we have a whole section on littering in the parking lot.
Okay.
We're trying to address it. Obviously, I feel like that should be an easy fix. Unfortunately, that's been a challenge this year. So,
Maybe you could put big fat garbage cans, movable garbage cans in all the places you don't want the kids to park.
and that actually, that's a great idea. We did get some stanchions that we are going to put in those areas with some signs on it, particularly the crosswalk area is a big concern for us. The last couple of weeks, we consistently had cars parking there, and we've called them in and talked to them, and they've been fine to move their cars, but it seems like once one leaves, another one takes its place, and we're just trying to curb that behavior, so.
Any further comments, questions, discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve implementing the PHS parking.
I move we implement the PSH fines for on parking.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board approve implementing the PHS parking fines as presented. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the standing motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That brings us to item B under action items, which is minimum basic education compliance report. Dr. Maxwell?
Thank you. Oops, more down. Again, I presented this at the last meeting, talked about our minutes and hours requirements. As you know, it's very, very tight, but we do meet those requirements, as well as computation of our total offerings and 180-day school year, our bell times, which we have to submit, and our graduation requirements, which are all up to date currently.
Okay. Comments or questions?
Questions?
Well, I move that we approve the 2016-17 minimum basic education compliance report as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2016-17 basic education compliance report. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the standing motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item will be our Kamiak Elementary schematic design report. Dr. Maxwell, who's going to do that for us?
And we are lucky enough to have Design West here with us tonight, and so Ned Warnick, I believe, is going to help present this. So.
handout which is identical to the PowerPoint that I would use, but it might give you a little bit better view and direct in person.
Thank you.
Or something you can put in the recycle bin when you're done. Will it be okay for me to address from here, or do you need my, on the microphone? We're okay?
Yeah.
So I'll stay here to, if this doesn't throw you off, I'll stay here so I can, well, can you?
You might have to speak up.
You want to use this?
Fine. Thank
Very
you.
sensitive, so.
Thank you. We're here as the second reading of the schematic design approval, and so in what we're seeking at this board meeting is schematic design approval, and to try to explain what that means, and so I'm sure you've been through this, but just to go through that again, schematic design approval is the conceptual design. So we're confirming the basic size of the building, the spatial organization, the multi-story arrangement, the basic site plan arrangement, but not necessarily the details, and the massing and the kind of basic building shape. What happens in design development, which will be the next phase that we seek approval, which will actually happen in December and then in the January meeting will be the series that's currently scheduled for. We'll talk about the details of materials and colors and things like that. And so, but we did bring some images to discuss as a preview towards that end. And so what we're seeking at this point is we're seeking approval at one level, but I'm sure that I hope to have a discussion at another level so that we will move efficiently forward towards that December and January approval. And so what we have tonight, and you're kind of seeing this, is I'll do a quick preview. So this is less extensive than the schematic design report that was presented last time. I know that I took a lot of your time, and so I will try to make this a preview or actually a review for you in this case. So the site, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, is a steep site, and so the basic organization of the building or the project, I'll try to speak up. It slopes from here to here, and it will be a series of terraces. So the lowest terrace will be the grass play field. The next step up will be blacktop and bark chip and play equipment. There'll be a small playground that will also be hardscape and bark chip and play equipment for lower grades. And then that will all occur on one terrace. It's essentially one elevation. It follows the street elevation that goes along with that. And so that's really dictated by the topography of the site. And there's not a lot of flexibility that we can do within the economic realities of this project. In terms of us trying to create a big flat area out on that hilltop, it would be cost prohibitive for us to do that. And I think there's some wonderful opportunities in those stepped approaches to that. You heard Jamie Brush speak earlier about her concerns about the number of driveways, and I am willing and trying to work closely with her on that. And I think we're actually very close, and I know that she holds those concerns quite close. I don't think that's really what we're going to be voting on tonight. The idea of the overall organization of the site is what we're looking at. The details of pedestrian and bike safety are something that she and I will continue, and the city and the district administration staff will work on continually through the project. So I don't think that there's any sort of controversy or conflict in terms of that. I think that she has a passionate position that I share, and so I think that we will end up on the same side of the fence on that. Continuing to move forward, the building plan is organized, and I'll just try to do this by direction so I can stay close to the microphone. To the right is the special events box, so the bright red is the gym, multipurpose room, stage, which day in, day out is the music room as well. And so that area is zoned off so that it can be opened after hours and leave the rest of the building closed and secured. At the knuckle is what we sometimes call the crossroads or the entrance, the foyer, the main circulation space. And so at that bend in the school, there is the main staircase, the elevator, and kind of, like I said, the crossroads. So all the hallways cross at that point. To your left is the administration block. To your right is academic support. Directly ahead of you, not looking like Jefferson and Franklin, but very similar in organization to Jefferson and Franklin, that when you walk in the front door, the library is right there presented to you. And then to the left off the crossroads will be the special ed suite. And so after that, what we have is really classroom wings. It is kind of the meat or the largest chunk of the building is the classroom wings. And so we have the clusters of 4 classrooms around breakout spaces. Each one of the classrooms has an office. And so we have that spectrum of educational space there. We have from the smallest, the baby bear size, is the teacher's office, one-on-one teaching, testing, those sort of things. The mama bear size, the medium, if you'll bear with my analogy, the medium size is the pull-out space that is shared by all of those classrooms. And so the ability to pull kids out of the classroom into a smaller area, not the full classroom size. And then the papa bear size is the full classroom. And so those classroom clusters of 4 work very well in terms of the idea if we have 4 kindergarten, we have 4 first grade, we have 4 second grade. Ideally, that's the case. In practice, we may have an extra section. We may ebb and flow as we go through the different ups and downs of the section size. The classrooms will be designed not exactly identically because we actually have different mounting heights for lower levels versus higher level grades. But in general, we'll be set up so that we'll be able to reassign classes back and forth if we do have that. Ideally, it works best if we have 4 sections at each grade level. Moving on to the upstairs, it's really just a stack. So the red space, those are all 2-story spaces, so there's no second story in that area. But upstairs, we continue to have these clusters of 4 classrooms around each other. With the one oddball in this is that art and technology, the specialty classroom spaces in that area, are the 2 classrooms at the second level that occur at that crossroads location at the knuckle. And so and being an architect, I gave the art room the view, so they get the side that looks out towards that beautiful view, and computer lab is towards the parking lot or the main entry side. Those in their shape and size and function and fitting out, those will be designed to be able to be converted to a general classroom as well. I know right now that you guys are bursting at the seams, and maybe I'm overly sensitive to this, but this idea that we're teaching kindergarten classrooms in spaces that are much, much smaller than what standard classrooms are, and some other things like that we're making do with until we can get to this, makes me feel like I want to make sure that these classrooms are as flexible as possible so we can address future class sizes and arrangements. Moving on, and I'm trying to do this to illustrate, I'll get to color versions of these, but really in what our conversation here tonight and what the approval that we hope to get has to do with the arrangement of the building, the massing of the building, the shape of the building. And so if we take away the materials and the color and some of the reactions and some of the discussion that goes on with that, this is really what we're talking about. Is a building that's shaped like this what we should go ahead and continue to design for Pullman School District, or should we take a step back and look at something different? And so these 2 images, which are essentially the same, and I'll explain this in a second, we have a couple different entries that we've been looking at. This is really all that we're asking for approval. We will be talking about colors and materials, and we invite the board to participate, and the community will have an opportunity in the community forum coming up in mid-November to discuss all those things about how they feel about colors and things like that. And so that's the level that we're talking about for schematic design approval. With that said, I very much appreciate the robust conversation that we had last school board meeting. And I took a long, hard look afterwards and said, yeah, you're right. Those images really give that impression that it has those problems and those concerns. And so in hearing that, we've spent the last 2 weeks really thinking hard about this. I realize this is something we're not asking for approval, but to give you a preview into kind of some of our thinking and what we're trying to say, what we think we heard you say, was looking at some things that would make the entry more inviting, looking at ways to try to maybe make it a little more colorful, a little more inviting for students. Now, in terms of the massing of the building and the organization of the building, really there's nothing different between this and what the images you just saw. We're really talking about what kind of exterior feel we want to give to this school. And so as a first option, what we looked at was one where let's make the entry more obvious. Let's turn it into a tower, make it into something transparent, make it into a beacon of learning, make it into something that when a kid walks up, he knows that's where it's going to be. That's the landmark that we're looking towards. Continue with the kind of traditional red brick for a lot of the material, but then start using some of the other siding materials in other colors. And so I'm not sure, and I'll have to leave the podium again, but so we do have kind of just a basic color up here in this band, but we took what Board Member Weed said and said, well, what about the butte idea? What about that idea of it having something to do with landscape? And I don't know that these images are doing a really a really good job of kind of portraying the design idea that we're kicking around here. But in these areas here, we're actually looking at a masonry pattern. It's actually a glazed face masonry, and so it, for all intents and purposes, it will look like a tile. It is a concrete block that has a glazed face, so it will look like tile. And looking at a transition of a pattern of those that goes from dark green to blue. And so really trying to mimic the landscape and how to take away some of the mystery of the design, we actually pixelated that image that is our intro image here, kind of my design inspiration and how much I love that view. And we're looking at what does that happen if we take that and we turn that into a masonry pattern that does that. And so it has some fondness to me, but it's still very early in the progression of us looking at that as an option. And so then taking a look at another direction would be potentially looking at lightening up that masonry, that brick masonry. Now, you'll find a common theme that I'm a big masonry fan, but I think that you as well, in terms of you have high quality facilities, long, durable, low maintenance. These are buildings that are going to be great for Pullman for many years to come. And so I think we're following in that theme of that's the kind of buildings that we build here in Pullman. In this one's a little more straightforward. We still have the same kind of sections of color. Those are the recessed portions around offices and restrooms and things like that. And so in this case, we're a little more clean cut in terms of our color palette. We just stay blue. And we try to use different shades of blue and things like that. And so in this case, still the glazed face masonry and those panels of blue, but really gives it kind of a punch of color. And then we put a little kind of a pinstripe of blue across the masonry panels. And then up again, up above, up at the metal panel level, we go to blue again. And in this case, what we did was we went away from the tower as an element of entry and instead tried to open it up as much as possible and have no obstacles as you look through this, and really just try to provide some shelter, reaching out to the kids as they walk up from the front walk. And so at this point, really these images, we're not asking for approval, but we are asking for feedback. And so I don't know if we're on the right track, but I'm hoping that to find out whether we are or if we need to adjust course again.
Well, it's a much happier looking place.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, thank you.
We're working on it, and I do appreciate those comments. I think they were well founded and well stated.
If you, and back on the first slide, when you're talking about the playground, and is it the white part that's going to be blacktop?
It is, and so it's a little misleading in terms of the color rendering, but
No, that's.
just
But my question is there a way to make that work also for event parking? So instead of having the parents parking all along the street?
You know, that's a really good idea. It's a little problematic in terms of how you get there, but it is a fire lane, so it's a completely drivable, all-weather route. And so depending on kind of event management, if we can, and this is a dangerous thing to say, but if we can train the parents and the visitors, I think that's very doable. I mean, a lot of that
Even, maybe a gate or something.
Yeah, there will definitely be a gate or bollards to get from, if you look to the right, kind of just above where it says events, there is a full fire lane going down about 7 feet, down onto that blacktop area, and then it comes back up and it re-enters the street up here at the farthest left intersection. And so it's a a fire truck can do it, so certainly a personal vehicle can do it. I think in terms of event direction and kind of management, I think we'd want it to be a one-way, and that actually would be a great thing, because people who cruise into the parking lot and find out the parking lot's full, they'd have an option rather than just trying to fight upstream through all the other people that are out of luck. So I think that's a really interesting idea. The blacktop is going to have some basketball backstop standards and things like that, but if we space it right, I think we could actually come up with something like that. That's an interesting idea. I think it's something to chase.
Use the space, but I mean, it would only be for event, like open house and
Right.
things like that.
Open house and holiday concert and a few of those things where we will have those parking challenges.
Here and there, so.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you. I'm thrilled with where you're going.
Okay, thank you.
I had just a suggestion. When I was first looking, and maybe this is the result of leaving my glasses at home. I thought your shaded trees were not trees.
So,
And it got me thinking about the possibility of colors being in that expanse of concrete, such as we have out in front of Jefferson with,
yeah,
and to use it as something so that maybe some color rolled it in, like you were saying that you were trying to get the colors to emulate in a way the view. If I know we won't have it be rolling, obviously, but if
some motif.
by color and shading and pattern, if it could emulate with some curves and,
Yeah.
and so on in the expansion breaks and,
Yeah.
and so on, or with just some different colors like we have out in front of. There are some of the sections that
Right.
are a darker gray.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
a lighter gray, that it not just be so flat and institutional.
I like that idea, and I think that's a good opportunity. One of
You
the,
wouldn't want to polish it, you know, and have it be emulating the Walk of Fame downtown.
no, we don't want that.
Flipping and so on, but some
I think, that-
terracotta-like colors to
Right.
it that would lead into the entrance.
absolutely, I think that's a great idea.
Not as obvious as arrows, but
Okay,
You could use arrows, because it's, you know, cheap camp. Sorry.
that might be too obscure. I was
Yeah,
thinking maybe more
that's fine.
taking it keying off the butte, but we can look at the person side of that as well. Other comments or input?
I like both entryways. I think I'm in favor of the tower idea. That's kind of attractive.
and actually, I'll add to that, having been just influenced greatly by the exhibit that's going on in Sandpoint of the solar generating, always not icing up, that there could be sections of that that would be
So I haven't seen,
lightable with the embedded LEDs and so on, and maybe they're looking for more demonstration projects other than just the main plaza in Sandpoint.
I'm curious about that. I have not seen that, but I heard the news story about it. We need to do some
There's,
research about that.
You can look and see on the, it's easily searchable on the website
Yeah.
and so on, and
Okay.
it's a going thing. They crowdfunded it at the latest stage at $2 million, and what's important about it, I think was really interesting, was there were contributions from 165 countries,
Huh.
along with 46 states, or almost all 50 states, but 165 countries donated in some way, people from those countries donated in some way to the project, and it seems to be workable, so
All right.
I don't know what the costs are gonna be in comparison to just.
I kind of liked it.
Obviously, a little more, but for
I kind
future-
of liked it when you pitched it as a demonstration project, because that sounded like maybe there's like a free intro offer that goes along with that. But I think we need to take a look at that.
It was a scary figure that there's, I think, 168,000 square miles of concrete and highways and parking lots in the lower 48, so
Yeah, that was what caught my attention in that news story. So yeah.
anyway. They're nearby to consult with.
Yeah.
Any further comments or questions? I think it looks real good. Conceptual drawings and drafts, yes, I like that.
Okay.
What's the pleasure of the board concerning the schematic designs?
I move we approve the schematic designs for the Kamiak Elementary School.
I will second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the schematic design for the construction of Kamiak Elementary School. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the schematic designs for the construction of Kamiak Elementary School, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. A motion carried unanimously. So, thank you very much, Ned.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes our action items for this evening.
There have to be a list of approved contractors.
We have a discussion item.
Yep. That brings us to our discussion item list, and we just have one discussion item this evening, and that is naming district facilities. And to present that is Superintendent Maxwell.
Oops. All right, sorry, a little delay here. Thank you. As you might remember, a while ago, we had several community members approach us about a variety of naming options regarding the PHS theater, possibly honoring Dr. Sturm in some way, and also Noah Everman. And so we reconvened the Facilities Naming Committee to review the recommendations that were brought by several different community members regarding several different folks here. And so the committee met, and we had really a rich discussion about naming, renaming, how we might honor those that were brought before the board to consider. And so the Facilities Naming Committee has presented 3 recommendations. One would be the previous PHS theater that was named after Dana Cleveland, to keep that name at the new PHS theater and maybe do a nice brass type plaque or something that could be tastefully put, but maybe in the entryway or somewhere in a nice prominent manner. Second would be a recommendation was made by a community member to honor Noah Everman in some manner. We know that the Pullman Education Foundation is working on the creation of a scholarship in his honor. We thought that might be rather than maybe naming a room at the high school or a portion of the high school, maybe focusing our energy on that scholarship in his honor. And so the committee would like to bring that recommendation forward. And the third was maybe that the new boardroom and community room at PHS could possibly be named after the former superintendent, Paul Sturm. And so, again, for your consideration, and the committee thought that given the host of recommendations and inputs that were presented to the board over a few months, that this might be a way to address all 3 of those recommendations and series of input to the board. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions and encapsulate the thoughts of the committee. So, very rich discussion. It's always a difficult conversation sometimes when you're looking at naming things for prominent people in our community. So.
Well, I think somehow I either just missed the invitation to attend as a member. I wish I would have been there, but I heartily concur with the recommendations, particularly, of course, the scholarship, but the other, the community room. That was always something that Paul really wanted to have, was a place that was easy for Doug to broadcast in, and the idea that it was going to be a community resource. I think the first time I heard that was the very first discussion we ever had about what the school was going to encompass, and was Paul having an idea that there would be a multi-purpose community room, and so I really think that that's a wonderful idea.
And we'd discuss again, maybe a brass plaque type that could be, nicely mounted somewhere in the entryway.
And I think, I will excuse myself from voting, but I think this is a good recommendation. So I appreciate the committee's
Thank you.
thoughtfulness.
The committees, and what Shannon and I both talked about was whatever is decided, though, that we would send that decision back, a letter to each of the community members that brought forth a recommendation, so they would have follow-up regarding that, so they know that they were heard and this was the outcome. So we'll have those letters prepared whenever you decide to take action on the recommendations. So.
I just happened to be filing through papers today that I had from previous board meetings, and I ran across the letter from the community band with all the signatures on it, recommending Dana Cleveland Theater name, so that kind of fit right in with where we were at with the meeting this evening. And it seems to me that that's the direction the community wanted to go anyway, so it's a wonderful thing.
Well done.
You're welcome. Thank you for your consideration. We appreciate it. And I want to thank the Facilities Naming Committee, because we had to recall them because I had forgotten that we were going to add that to the agenda, and they were very gracious in coming together and having a heartfelt conversation. It's always a difficult topic when you're discussing naming and
As Frith puts it, we do discuss it, fuss and discuss.
we fuss and discuss,
But we got it done.
So, but I really appreciate their work and their time commitment, because it's very gracious of all the committee members.
All right, any further comments or questions? If not, that will conclude our discussion item list for this evening. We do have informational items that anyone can take a look at in the packets. And the board will conclude this evening with an executive and closed session to discuss labor negotiations and property. How long do you think the meeting will last?
I would say no longer than 20 minutes.
Okay. Take about 20 minutes. At the end of the 20 minutes, we will come out of our closed and executive session to adjourn, but there will be absolutely no action taken at that time. So I would entertain a motion to go into recess, or I'll just say, if there's no objections, we will recess our regular meeting. And if anybody has questions or comments for the board before we clear the room, you're welcome to come forward. So we are stand in recess.